Welcome to the Straight Talk on Fleet podcast with Erin Gilchrist. Each week, Erin will be breaking down fleet management, trying to cut through the noise and get down to the real issues safety and operations leaders are struggling with every day. The goal will be to get to the bottom of how leaders can break down these silos of information and accelerate change management, how to use real-time, accurate data to drive massive efficiencies across fleet-focused business processes, and to elevate people's careers with emerging best practices. Now it's time for the Straight Talk on Fleet.
I cannot even believe I'm saying this, but this is episode 65. So we've been at this for less than 3 years, 65 episodes under our belt with today's episode. So welcome to Straight Talk on Fleet. I am your host, Erin Gilchrist. I am the VP of Fleet Evangelism at IntelliShift. So say that 5 times fast. And what that really means is I just get to use my experience as a long-time fleet leader to share knowledge, bring knowledge to the Straight Talk on Fleet with awesome guests, and really build this community where fleet managers can elevate their careers, right? Learn things, talk about things, solve for things that help them maybe promote themselves within their organization and within the industry. So cheers to us. Today, I'm super excited to have my guest here, Stefano Denari, and Stefano works with Fleetio, and Stefano serves as a fleet ecosystem strategist. Is just as cool as my title, I think. So welcome, Stefano. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are so excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erin. Congratulations on episode 65.
Yes, we are pumped. So Fleetio is a maintenance software provider, and they are giving fleet teams all they need to manage their fleet assets from cradle to grave. Despite how you're structured out there, folks, they can help you with that. Also, what they're doing really essentially is making managing your fleet easier, the repairing, the managing of your fleet just simple. So today we're going to talk primarily about fleet maintenance. And if I could just talk for a second, fleet maintenance it's tough. It's tougher than it has to be. So we're going to get into all the fun nuances of a fleet, what a really great fleet maintenance program could or should look like. So Stefano, before we do that, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So once again, thanks for having us and congratulations on the success over the last 3 years. My name's Stefano Denari. I've been with Fleetio for over 3 years now. Prior to Fleetio, I worked in the craft beer industry, managing a multi-state wholesaler network, so making sure that our product was shipped and delivered and enjoyed on time and as cold as possible. And currently, I'm a product marketer for our ecosystem, and that's really our integrations ecosystem. So what does that mean exactly? You can kind of think of me and my team as the upfitters of Fleetio, so helping to make sure Fleetio's outfitted to make connecting your different systems like telematics and fuel and all the data that's being shared between your different systems as automated and productive as possible, really to help fleets reach their maintenance goals a lot faster and with a lot less headaches.
Love it. And as a longtime fleet manager, that's like music to my ears. Well, great. I am so excited about this conversation today. I guess I'll start out by saying that, any fleet manager or safety manager, risk manager, especially ops leaders out there who are listening, I think we all understand that the biggest challenge with maintenance is compliance. And that's a broad brushstroke there. But what that really means is it's not just compliance around getting the PMs, oil, lube, filter, tire, brake done on time. It's about really just the things that we could have prevented had we done something as simple as a vehicle inspection. But compliance to get vehicle inspections done, compliance to get PMs done on time is a huge task inside of organizations, especially fleets that have a larger or more national presence, whether they're a managed fleet where, someone out in the sea of providers is performing that maintenance, or whether they have their own shops. It still takes the driver and the operations managers to work together to make sure those vehicles are getting serviced um, on time, not over serviced, not under serviced, because those two are also a problem. But like using tools and data and information and apps and things to try to create this, I like your word ecosystem. Talk about that a lot here on Straight Talk on Fleet, is to create an ecosystem where we can make it easy for drivers and for fleet managers and operations managers to do the fleet stuff that we need to get done, right? So that compliance piece is a huge challenge. So I think one of the things that, we've talked about before, Stefano, is just this idea of how organizations think about fleet and the maintenance. So talk about that from your perspective for a minute, so that maybe we can help, you know, fleet managers flip the script on this a little bit.
Totally. I think any organization that manages vehicles and equipment to serve their customers is in the maintenance business. And, before joining the product side of Fleetio, I was on our sales team. So I worked every day with prospective Fleetio customers, working with fleet managers, maintenance managers, ops managers to evaluate Fleetio and our ecosystem as a solution for them to improve their maintenance operations. And the amount of times that these leaders would start our conversations with, look, my team thinks of us as the problem child of the organization. I don't want that to be the reputation anymore. And it's because oftentimes maintenance is just seen as this cost center. It's seen as this really expensive line item on the budget. And I think maintenance is under a microscope so much because it is arguably one of the most expensive line items on your budget
Oh
because
yeah.
it has the most it is a lever that can help drive the most impact and kind of improvement for your business because of how much money actually goes into the fleet. If we remove acquisition and purchasing and staffing, your fleet budget, 75% of that is made up of fuel and maintenance. So any way that you can turn maybe reactive spending into proactive spending is a really smart play. And I think your bosses are going to be a lot happier where we can show how that dollar is trading out.
Yeah. I love that commentary because often I talk to fleet managers about, how their organizations view what they do. And this word cost center comes up so much. It makes me sort of sick because I think about if an organization has a fleet, then that fleet serves a really, really critical operational um, need for the organization. And so, if we can think about fleets as revenue generators, right? And that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to put fleet leaders in a position to talk about revenue generation versus just spend. And that means making good decisions about how you maintain your vehicles and, of course, fuel them in safety. But I think safety really starts with driver and vehicle fitness. And a huge part of vehicle fitness is this maintenance topic, right? And it's about how can we know when something's going to happen ahead of time so we can prevent those sort of unplanned breakdowns where we miss customer appointments, we miss deliveries, we couldn't spray lawns, we couldn't clean carpets, we couldn't change windshields, all the amazing things that fleet drivers and technicians do out there in the world. And, if fleet managers could talk to their organizations in a different way, then maybe that organization responds differently and better and really equips the fleet and the fleet manager with tools and technologies like we're going to talk about today. So the reason we get together today is because at IntelliShift, we have a network of partners who we work with to help enhance the experience that fleet leaders have with IntelliShift and some of its partners. Fleetio happens to be one of our amazing partners in our ecosystem. And so, I think some of the topics today that we'll cover is really like around these common pitfalls that fleet managers encounter, as well as just some missed opportunities in this, managing the business of maintenance for your fleet. So let's dig in to that a little bit. So talk to us about what you're seeing as those common mistakes, those biggest mistakes that fleets make as it relates to maintenance?
Totally. I think a good place to start is, I think we're in this industry because we like solving problems. We like being hands on. We like diving in and getting to work immediately. And I would say a major challenge is that we have this idea that we can go from zero to perfect overnight. And we set these really high expectations for ourselves. But the reality is we have to start small. We have to think a little bit more strategically and focus on fixing one process or one inefficiency and kind of build consistency from there. Because ultimately, you have to get the ball rolling down the hill before you get to the end of the hill. And I
Yeah.
think that also just builds some confidence too. It shows that you are strategic about the areas that you're focused. We're probably going to talk about breakdown repairs a lot because that's one of the easiest ways to change your budget, change where you're spending your planned and downtime. And
Mhm.
so just really starting small, having an idea and getting the ball rolling, but understanding that it's not all going to happen overnight. And also unplanned maintenance is just a part of running a fleet, right? You can't control the weather. You can't control other drivers on the road, but you can think about connecting systems like an IntelliShift and a Fleetio as a starter or a good place to say, look, we're going to be really intentional about our maintenance program. These two tools are going to help us do that. And let's continue to push that ball down the field.
So that reactivity stuff, I feel like so many fleets are in multiple systems and, they're just swivel chair managing and trying to steward all this data themselves. That's one big thing that I see. It's a common pitfall. But sometimes it's because they just don't have the support of their organization to do something more strategic. What are some other signs that you see of that reactive, living in a reactive maintenance space?
Totally. For the things that, you can control, I mean, if you are seeing recurring repairs for the same asset or maybe a group of assets across one division or not, if you're seeing some varying repair cost across different vendors, so maybe you don't have consistency. If you do outsource your maintenance on the types of vendors that you're going to, you could be nickel and dimed in a couple of different ways that's showing that, hey,
Oh
we
yeah.
just get this thing complete and back on the road and it doesn't matter who we're going to. And if you get some, driver complaints, it's probably indicating that your program is reactive. So as much as we talk about proactive or preventative maintenance, it's because you can reduce a lot of the noise and really shift the attention to some more of the like positive work that you can work on. And a quote or at least a stat that has stuck with me for a really long time. If you're familiar with Joel Levitt, he's kind of educator within the space. And when I first started at Fleetio, there was this sort of an owner's manual called the Guide to Preventative and Predictive Maintenance. And a lot of this was helping our customers try to build a business case on why they needed PM in the first place. But there's a breakdown formula in there that basically says that the average PM program, whether that is software or just you being a little bit more intentional about planned maintenance, can reduce your breakdowns by about 70%. So essentially, you take all the cost of your breakdowns, you multiply that by 70%. That's still more expensive than investing in PM. And so it just shows that there are like small little tactics that you could do. Maintenance every single day, there's something for us to take away, to learn from, and to improve on. And that's how you kind of shift from, man, we always have all these breakdowns. We're constantly dealing with repairs. We got no consistency to, let's try to build a little bit more consistency and
Mhm.
that we can do this to our bosses, to ourselves, and to our team.
Yeah, that's a huge number. And I want to talk about driver complaints for a second. I mean, does anybody even ask their drivers what they think? I think a huge inroad to managing a more successful fleet and especially a more successful maintenance program is talk to your drivers. If you can't get something done, they're likely the cause. And they can tell you why it is that they cannot get those inspections done to let you know actually what's going to happen to your vehicle before it does. Or they can tell you why it is that they can't get in for that oil change or why they roll into the tire shop on bald tires. And then the tire shop calls you and they say, this is a safety issue. And then you have to say, okay, well, we're going to approve that tire buy. And it's not an approved tire. And you just spent, $60 more a tire than maybe what you had negotiated with your tire vendor. If you have one of those, or if you have a tire program, if you don't get one, we could have a whole different podcast just about tires. But the driver complaints is such an interesting, you know, indicator that you spoke of because get out there and talk to your drivers. Ask them what's going on. Why is it that, we can't accomplish XYZ in our maintenance program? And likely it's something that you're doing or your organization is doing or not doing that is making this task harder for operations managers to push to drivers and for drivers to actually execute on. So there's ways around that, but really talking to the people who are, executing on your program is really, really important. So, cost is a huge thing, when it comes to maintenance, because we know how much maintenance programs cost. But, talking about how a bad maintenance program or poor maintenance, this ripple effect can take on organizations and on fleets into we talked about drivers and their angst. So turnover, customer satisfaction, safety scores. Dig in and tell us what you're seeing, in this ripple effect type of thing when maintenance isn't done how it should be.
Totally. So I think maintenance is one of the great metaphors of life. And personal note, my wife and I are celebrating our 10-year anniversary today, and it has taken a lot of
Great.
might not want to hear that, but just for this discussion, like any good any good relationship, any good, is going to take investment. And I think when it comes to thinking about how you maintain your fleet, it's not just about making sure that your vehicles and equipment don't miss an oil change or don't miss a tire rotation. It's about maintaining a culture that puts your team front and center because, like you said, Aaron, they are the front lines. As much as we're talking about autonomous driving and things like that, your drivers are still the ones that are the ones on the road. They're the ones dealing with your field operations, the projects, your customers, you name it. So really making sure that you're maintaining an overall culture of success and investment is priority number one. I think so at the high level there. But if we do,
Love it. Happy anniversary, number one.
thank you.
And congratulations on that. But you're right. It takes work and communication and strategy, right? For everything we do in this life, but certainly our fleet maintenance programs. So I love that connection you made there. That's great.
Totally. And we have two little kids and, having kind of worked in and out of industries that are vehicle or, heavy equipment facing, like I think maintenance is just a good life lesson. Like you take care of the things that you invest in, and that's just something that's useful for anybody, whether it's our 4-year-old or, fleet, to work with. But, I think to get back to your original question of like, what is the impact of bad maintenance practices? If your assets are constantly breaking down, it reflects poorly not only on your drivers that are there dealing with your customers or the ones that are maybe broken down on the side of the road, your logo's there. Someone drives by, they think negatively of it. And obviously across the rest of your organization that isn't on the road. But if we think about just from an industry perspective, when we look at some of the FMCSA data, like the number one cause of roadside violations are maintenance related. They're tied to tires, they're tied to your brakes, so they're tied to your lights. So you're not just risking cost, you're not just risking downtime, you're risking a lot of your reputation as a business. And I think that just once again points back to the importance and the immediate impact that a strong maintenance culture and a maintenance program can have across the entire kind of stakeholder group that you have there.
Right. And everybody, a huge industry problem. I talk to our customer advisory board members about this all the time. We always start our CAB meetings with like, talk about your challenges, both as an organization, what's happening in the industry. And every time, no, since we started our cab, it is, wow, we can't find good employees. We can't find good technicians and drivers. So when you think about, are we doing everything we can to retain the talent that we have and attract new talent? What's word of mouth and referrals are huge in this industry. So you have a driver that's like talking to all of his buddies and saying, "Hey, you should come to work for our company." Um, that's a huge, huge statement, right? That means they like working there, they have a good experience. But if they're driving vehicles that are breaking down all the time, they don't feel like they have the proper tools to do those repairs on time. They're missing customer appointments, which affects their pay. Not only are they going to be looking for a new place to work, but they certainly aren't going to tell anybody else to come and work for your organization. So that maintenance culture is so important in retaining the talent you have, probably more important than most people think of, right? And I'm sure you see it with your customer base a lot, that happier drivers do better work, and a happy driver has a vehicle that runs well, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's like Fleetio operates on an unlimited user mindset because, like you just said, it takes more than just a technician or a driver or a fleet manager to run the business. You need dispatch, you need leadership, you might need safety, you might need accounting, you might need a vendor sometimes that just pops in and helps you with the repair. And you need that connectivity because it takes an entire group to get the job done. And
Yes.
I mean, that's what's most
Really?
exciting about the fleet business is that you're not on an island. You get to work as a team. You get to work in these, amazing conditions with really smart and, experts in their field. And the more that you can do to make that a more collaborative or more exciting place to show up and work every day, the better. And it
Okay,
all,
so that's the culture you're talking about, right? I mean, what does that look like? So when, if you're working, think about one of your customers, for example, who you feel like really has a high performing maintenance culture. I mean, what is what does that look like? What are they doing?
yeah, I mean, I would say when maintenance is dialed in, things just work. And that is like music to anybody's ears, right? I think another quote that sticks with me sometimes is like, you're in the maintenance business, not to necessarily be in the maintenance business, right? Like when we
Mhm.
talk about maintenance, we often over index and reactive. But when things are humming, right? Like then that means that you're doing a really good job. So certain customers that stand out to us in terms of like what their maintenance culture looks like, why are they winning? They're organized, there's predictability. So when they say that they're going to do something or when vehicles are going to be down or when there is planned maintenance, it happens and it's trusted by everybody from drivers, field teams, all the way up to executives, and there's buy-in across the board. Um,
That
One other thing that I think is really important is that when it is humming, I think we often hear too that you don't actually get time away from work. And so when maintenance programs work, hopefully you get those fleet managers that can actually take some time away. But really, it's
and
just
really check out while they're on vacation?
so
That's
well
a thing?
that I know in today's day
Could
and age,
be.
like, we're never sort of off the clock, but like I think the idea of basically saying, hey, look, we have systems in place that can kind of run on autopilot. We have teams that we trust. We have processes where they're executing, and I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And anytime that you can kind of cut time spent scheduling maintenance and more time focused on turning around work. So you get to prioritize whether that is an issue that just popped up, but because of the project you have or because of, whatever you have to do, that vehicle does take precedent. You have more control, you have more predictability, and you just have a more comfortable system to operate out of.
Absolutely. I just love the fact that, when things are humming, fleet managers can take a vacation. So, all you fleet managers out there who are listening, that, you know, the more you can get this fleet management thing well oiled, like a well oiled machine, the, more time off you can take without your phone or your your computer. Um, what about, like, so fleet managers who are listening, what's one thing that someone could do today, that they could just start down this path, or a habit they could, start to implement that would help them see immediate improvement.
Totally. Mm, Like I said earlier, like you don't have to bite off more than you could chew. You can focus on something really small that can drive, some pretty big results. So I think when we think about investing in technology, sometimes you don't need the entire system. You just have to get started. You have to start planning. You have to start finding something that you can fix today. And I always kind of point back to those breakdowns and unplanned repair costs, because that can drive, I think, just the biggest, fastest results that you can have. So a couple of things. I know you maybe said one needle mover, but like two things that maybe you could do tactically. Maybe you don't have an inspection process today, but like you had said, Aaron, like one major cultural shift that you can have is just improving communication or buy-in with your drivers, investing in that relationship. So one thing that you could do, whether you have an inspection process or not, is getting your drivers to report a defect after each of their shifts. Even if it's nothing at all, it could be a stain on the seat, it could be my brakes are squeaking. You just need to start documenting what issues are happening and allow you to start prioritizing those things. And having visibility into those issues starts to give you that control, starts to get you on the path of being a bit more proactive. On the other hand, I think you could basically, if you have more data, why don't you look at the last 10 breakdowns that you did and then ask how many of them were preventable? If you don't know, maybe that's the first signal that you got to tighten up your inspection compliance, or maybe you have to really start on this PM program. But it doesn't have to be, we need to, improve our replacement cycles by X amount, or I need to increase my PM compliance by 85% and I'm only at 20%. Really, you could just look at what maintenance, unplanned maintenance was preventable. How can we shift those dollars to be more profitable? How can we show that we're investing in our vehicles, investing in our staff, investing in the customer or our company too? And it all starts with just pick something. We have something that we can always work on every day, and just start chipping away at it. See what trends are there, and you'll be surprised at the results that can come from that.
Well, what I love about what you shared there is, so let's say you take your last 10 and you find some trends. That is the easiest way then to go to leadership and say, okay, we're trying to, we watched this podcast with Erin and Stefano. And Stefano told us to do this. So we did. Here's what we found out. And then maybe, just maybe, you can get leadership to understand that based on what you found with those 10 breakdowns, that there could be one thing, one tool, one technology. Maybe it's just implementing digital vehicle inspections into your fleet. Maybe that's your first step in convincing leadership that you need to do something different, right? Um, that you need to make changes in your maintenance program, because right now, what you're finding is maybe in your last 10, all of them were preventable. And I'm going to say that they probably will be. So when you do this exercise, I'm just going to give you forewarning that probably 9 of the 10 were, if not all 10, were preventable if you had done XYZ. So whatever that XYZ is, maybe just do X, right? Start with X and say, hey, we're going to find a way to get driver feedback, like you mentioned, which was your other tip, is how do we build that relationship with the drivers or the technicians or whatever, who can tell us what they're seeing or what they're feeling or hearing about their asset, no matter what they're operating. It could be a forklift, it could be a class 8 truck, it could be a cargo van, just to have them start to communicate. But the means by which they can communicate might be what that missing piece of the puzzle is, right? Um, I think it was like episode 9 way back when of my podcast. I did a whole podcast on vehicle inspections because I am so passionate about that being like the most fundamental practice in fleet management. It's kind of like you give your 2-year-old, so you have littles, so you're not going to hand your little a pair of scissors and just be like, you're never going to do that. You're going to be like, here's these scissors. Oh gosh, I just pray they don't, I'm just going to like, hope they don't impale themselves with those. You'd never do that, right? You would never do it. It's like the same, we're doing the same thing. When we hand we give the keys to a driver, who either isn't trained properly, doesn't know, doesn't even know how to do a vehicle inspection, or doesn't even have a way to share with you when they find something wrong with their vehicle. So you're putting a driver, a human capital, your most important asset are your people, your people out in an expensive, dangerous tool without knowing if the tool is ready, sharp, you know? It's like a carpenter's not going to go out without his, he's not going to, nobody's cutting wood with a dull axe. Nobody's doing anything without making sure that, hey, the tools I'm using today need to be able to serve my purpose. But yet, fleets all over the world are sending their drivers out in the most dangerous tool they'll ever issue, which is the vehicle, without checking to see if it's like ready for the day, which is baffling, right? So like we could spend all day talking about tires and all day talking about inspections. But I think if you talk about that one thing and you do evaluate those 10, breakdowns, you'll find that there was an indicator. And most likely the driver probably noticed or knew about that indicator, but maybe he or she just didn't have a way to tell you.
Totally. I mean,
It's mind boggling.
and when we think about PM, right, it seems pretty easy, right? You build a consistent program, you are scheduling service off of specific intervals, right? Every 6,000 miles, 6 months, 250 hours, whatever it might be. There's a lot of driving. There's a lot of activity that happens between each of those PM intervals that you need to document, because every day your driver or field team is operating off highway equipment or, obviously over the road units. Something has happened that will impact your business in some way. That could be positive, that could be negative. But as you look to keep your drivers safe, as you look to keep your vehicles and equipment operating longer, defects, communication are the easiest way to prevent those mishaps. And it doesn't have to be complicated, right? I think tools that integrate like IntelliShift and Fleetio make it really easy for you to get diagnostic data like faults and DTCs and meters and odometers over to help drive your PM programs. Also make it easy to pull through driver defects on inspections, but just understanding that like having that communication, having a clear understanding of like what the trends are, what the issues are, allows you to start being more proactive. And that's the whole goal of this. Yes, let's build PM programs that follow compliance and hit that 6 months, 6,000 miles, but also let's make sure that we're focusing on maintenance that really matters and keeps our drivers safe and our vehicles running a lot longer.
Right. And I love the maintenance that really matters because, if you just go with the manufacturer's recommended schedules, you could miss things. You could be under or over maintaining your vehicles. So when you talk about, integration, thinking about what is that telematics device telling you? You and I, Stefano, could operate the exact same type of asset, and we could drive the same distance to this. We could start at the same place and go out and back, and we're going to have different fuel efficiency. Maybe it's because my driver habits are deterring my vehicle's efficiency, and yours are enhancing your vehicle's efficiency because you're driving in such a way that it's better care for your asset. So when you think about maintenance, it's not just about every 6,000 miles. It's learning how drivers who operate vehicles, how weight and upfitting and other factors can change the maintenance schedule of a vehicle. So it's not just about the maintenance schedule. It's about all the things that we're doing to it, the different drivers that are driving the assets, how they're acting behind the wheel. And are they jackrabbit starts or harsh braking or harsh cornering or idling? They're doing things that are going to change that typical maintenance schedule. So bringing that data together into one place is I think mission critical to successful maintenance. So if we think about the future of fleet maintenance, I know you talked about it. It is, a connected and integrated space. But, when you at Fleetio think about, what's it look like 3 to 5 years from now? I don't know if you have any insights or into that, but what might it look like in a few years?
Totally. I think, me and the team, we're responsible for building out our integrations roadmap. Yes, that's thinking 5 years down the road, but really that's also thinking right now, what do our customers need? I think overall, we will be moving away from maybe checklist to more of that connected experience. So, um, I promise not to talk about AI a lot, but when you think about innovations, it's just how are you making your data more actionable? How are you using the information at your disposal, whether that's a defect on a paper form, whether that's an automated defect or fault that comes through from an integration. How does that come through from your historical maintenance data? Maybe some sensor data that's coming in from the vehicle as well. How are you using your data more efficiently and more strategically? And so I think that's fundamentally where the industry is heading. It is going to be more about data. Data is the fuel that is basically powering your maintenance operation. The good thing is that you have technology that's more available, it's more accessible, it's more affordable. They all typically work with one another so
Mhm.
that you're reducing the number of tasks or the number of systems that you have to kind of log into. And if you are having to switch systems, you're going to one for a specific answer, but you also have kind of your main workflows that you can operate out of. But I would say, won't talk about AI a whole lot, but it's an exciting time because fleets will become more efficient. Fleets are going to be more productive, and everybody should hopefully simplify their operations. But it's also really important to think about, as much as we invest in technology, we also have to understand that there is still the human element. There is still the person on your team that's driving the vehicle or performing the maintenance on your asset. And I think what I'm maybe a little bit more excited about is what our investment looks like in our teams, in our technicians. And one thing that, we're pretty excited about over on the Fleetio side is that we launched a scholarship program with ASE to help invest in the future of our technicians. And so, although the kind of nominations have closed, what we did was basically give our customers the opportunity to nominate anybody that they wanted to and give them a scholarship to pay for the registration and the tests and even help them level up their tools that they have. So upgrade the tools that they have. And I think we could talk about fleet efficiency. Technology is going to be a part of that, but it is going to take this next generation of technicians, of drivers, of operators, of fleet leaders investing in themselves, investing in their organizations to really build the future success that we're all really interested in.
I love it. That is like the perfect end to this amazing podcast, is investing in the people. I love that you guys are doing that. When we post this podcast, we're definitely going to highlight that. I love it. And I think that there's this no more important, aspect of fleet management than the people. And, they're who get it done. We just want to give them tools and tech to make it easier so that, they can focus on more strategic things. So, um, Stefano, thank you so much for being with us today, for spending this time, for dropping hot tips and ideas for fleet managers to, better succeed in the area of maintenance for their fleets. So, thank you again. For our audience, like, subscribe, comment, get involved, join the conversation. You can find us anywhere where you find your favorite content. But thank you for listening to episode 65 of Straight Talk on Fleet podcast. And until next time, keep it real, keep it safe for fleet's sake.